Most of y'all are aware that describing our congregation as operating on a shoestring budget is pretty generous because it assumes we can afford shoestrings. We're a small working class group. People can't donate what they don't have. So our leadership team is on a volunteer basis. That means that I'm working a day job and picking up Uber rides on the weekends. Some of those conversations with passengers have been, let's just say, enlightening. I had a passenger the other night who, upon hearing that I wouldn't be staying out all Saturday night because I had a sermon to preach that Sunday, decided to educate me on the subject of theology. Surprisingly enough, his insistence that my reproductive organs would exclude me from ministry was not the worst part. The part that was really jarring to me was his insistence that the state was ordained by God to reward good people and punish bad people, and that's why the church doesn't really need to have any real consequences for people who have done harm. So let's pick apart the logical inconsistencies there for a minute. First of all, that assumes that everybody worships that specific God. What about people in our mixed faith congregation, myself included, whose prayers are addressed slightly differently? Are we then exempt from the edicts of the state? Not that I would mind, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way. Secondly, we are aware that there are injustices in the state processes, especially where the carceral system is concerned. You can either believe, A, in an all-knowing, all-loving God, or B, that this system that is full of injustices is divinely ordained as is. Can't have both. But what really struck me is the difference in what that means for the nature of faith. If we are assuming, as he did, that we're operating under a Christian paradigm, then we have to talk about what Jesus actually said. He didn't say, turn the other cheek just to let people pick on you. There was a protocol at that time for how the Roman soldiers were allowed to slap a citizen. It was a backhand. And when you offer somebody the other cheek, what you're saying is, hit me again, but this time as an equal. When he said, when someone compels you to go with them 1 mile, go with them 2, that was because the limit that a Roman soldier was allowed to force someone to carry his belongings for him translates into English as a mile. Carrying his stuff for him 2 miles meant that having you carry it all became illegal. These were not acts of submission to a powerful state. These were acts of passive-aggressive resistance. Even in the religious environment that this man was describing, the idea of simple resistance is more favored than the idea of quiet submission. I would argue that instead of measuring faith by how obedient people are to an existing system and how much power they give it over their lives, we should be defining faith as trusting that there's something bigger than ourselves, pushing us towards a greater empathy for people in pain. Instead of focusing on unquestioning submission, we should be measuring our practice individually and collectively by whether the most vulnerable among us is better off for us being there. And living in a society that isn't built on that framework of compassion means that we won't always be able to rely on rule following to provide us with a spiritual shortcut. Instead of aligning ourselves with power, hoping to be rewarded, we owe it to the world around us to align with those in most need of support. The first step of living as people of faith is having faith in the possibility of a better world.